We continue our exploration of the 15 rules of thought and rules of action. November 29th, November, Saturday. We share our contemplative review of the rules and offer some ideas to elucidate the light of Sagittarius, a beam of directed, focused light. In this, the point of light becomes the beam, revealing a greater light ahead and illumining the way to the center of the light. Listen, touch, see, apply, know, in order to dare. Today, we continue our focus on the 15 rules of thought as an entirety and consider these in relation to the rules of action in Sagittarius. Sagittarius. The keynotes are not 5 in number. 1. Attached or fused duality, the centaur. Unattached duality, the archer. Freedom or one-pointedness, the bow and arrow. 2. Human ambition leading eventually to spiritual aspiration. 3. A clear shaft of light, which is the intuitive and focused attitude of the pledged disciple. 4. The returning arrow of the intuition, as it is sometimes called, for it is the shaft of the arrow of aspiration which returns to the sender as the arrow of intuition. Sagittarius is one of the intuitive signs, for only the intuition will suffice to carry a man to the foot of the mountain of initiation in Capricorn. 5. Idealism, which is the power to see the vision and to direct one's course towards it. This is the work of Mars, the expression of the 6th ray.
Would anyone like to share some thoughts about any one of these 5 keynotes? I'm thinking of Mars as the hierarchical ruler of Sagittarius, and these 5 keynotes as a kind of progression in relation to where any one of us, any group, any nation may be in relation to the path of initiation, the path of light. So maybe we could think for ourselves, where are we in relation to developing this intuitive and focused attitude? And for those who are working with the soul of their nation, one may consider where the nation is in relation to these 5 keynotes. Ben.
The fifth stage of meditation, Sagittarius. Sagittarius, inspiration, preparation for initiation. The soul inspires the personality life. The soul expresses itself through the personality, the initiate. I, your master Dwalkul, would here remind you that though initiation is taken in Capricorn, the man is an initiate before he is initiated. This is the true secret of initiation. Inspiration originates on the higher levels. It presupposes a very high point in evolution, for it involves the egoic consciousness and necessitates the use of atomic matter, thus opening up a wide range of communicators. It spells safety. It should be remembered that the soul is always good. It may lack knowledge in the three worlds and in this way be deficient, but it harbors no evil. Inspiration is always safe, whereas mediumship is always to be avoided. Inspiration may involve telepathy, for the person inspiring may do three things. He may use the brain of the appointed channel, throwing thoughts into it. He may occupy his disciple's body, the latter standing aside consciously in his subtler bodies, but surrendering his physical body. A third method is one of a temporary fusing, if I might so call it, an intermingling when the user and the used alternate or supplement as needed to do the appointed work. I cannot explain more clearly.
So this seems to me to be Master Dwalkul explaining to us how the soul begins to permeate, penetrate, inspire. Does anyone have any thoughts about this idea of the soul using the brain of the personality, the appointed channel, throwing thoughts into it?
I'm sort of struck with how the brain is quieted by the soul. I find that on that path to become a more conscious soul incarnate, that my brain is quieter, and my impulse that comes from the brain to express and speak has a bit of a bit of a restriction on it, that it's almost as if that flow has been sort of dammed up a little bit, not in a way that it doesn't flow, but in a way that it is just quieter and not as free flowing in terms of conscious awareness. So that brain is just a bit more still, and with that, I think, comes thoughtfulness instead of impulsiveness. And I sort of acknowledge the soul as being that process.
I'm touched by the statement, inspiration is always safe. It comforts me. And also, as Andrea was talking about inspiration, quieting the brain, the mind, it reminds me to quiet my mind to receive inspiration.
Now, that line also struck me as well, but whereas mediumship is always to be avoided. So, how do we know, as the observer, observing somebody who's inspired, perhaps, and speaking? Or, yeah, I don't know, I'm just confused exactly. Mediumship, it'd be pretty hard to, yeah, I don't know. What is mediumship then? Over. I think.
I would say the difference between inspiration and mediumship is the knowing, because what the inspiration for me, as I see it, always comes with a knowing, while mediumships is still kind of coming from seemingly outside. It's of course not outside, but it's like, oh, something from somewhere else is coming in. While inspiration is always coming with some kind of knowing. So that's for me how I try to differentiate.
Okay, but he may he may use the brain of the excuse me, appointed channel, throwing thoughts into it. So if you are the one is the appointed channel, then you have to know that these thoughts are thoughts that you may have as well. To know the validity of the thoughts, you have to know that they are true. Just questioning.
It comes with time, with trial and error. We have to learn it.
I'm thinking of a book I read, St. Augustine of Hippo, De Magistro, on the teacher, Christ as the teacher. And he says that nobody teaches us anything. They help us discover what we already know, because it's Christ within.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And I think, with DK giving those instructions, know thyself, and then proceed slowly and with caution, it helps us to discern when we may be put in a situation where we're in a group of those who are still at the point of mediumship. They have tests and trials to go through on their own, through their own rheology, and integrate their own bodies. For the mediumship arises from the astral body. So it's knowing the channel, which takes one or puts one in relationship with the soul vehicle. And I think that that's something that we learn over time, and as Ben said, you learn in your own ways through your life, trial and error, and you become more confident as you move forward. That if you do, and I think Catherine noted that we need to remember that thinking of the intuition as a focused arrow, that may assist people, when you have studied and you've meditated and something comes in, it is as if a thought has been thrown into the brain along that channel, and it is an arrow of the intuition, that spark. At least that's something I've heard people talk about, and I can remember having a couple of instances where that has occurred. The only other thing I would add in relation to B is if you have had the blessing to be around those who are in the Buddhist tradition, who have surrendered their physical body, literally, and have gone into meditative study in isolation. I was put in relation to an individual who was doing that, had been in that place for 14 years, just standing aside and surrendering the physical body. And it isn't as if this person stopped functioning as a physical body, but the total life was turned over to that standing aside, I guess, in the way it's phrased by the Tibetan. This is an image to try to put together the ways in which the Sagittarian energies progress from the level of desire or instinct and that mass consciousness to aspiration, using the intellect that arrives at intuition to catapult toward an illumined state, an intuition governing aspiration. And what this does, it releases the vision, the statement of the Sagittarian, I vision. So the soul consciousness in the early stages, then, DK tells us, leads to the first and second initiations. Ben?
The formulas from the universal creative aspect. Formula 1. The transition from darkness to light. Creation in the light. Two. Transition from the unreal to the real. The nature of reality. Creation in time and space, as understood in the three worlds. Third formula. Transition from death to immortality. The nature of life. The creative process and life energy. 4. Transition from chaos to ordered beauty. Relation of the world of effects and the world of meaning. Then relation to the world of causes the nature of karma, progressive evolutionary creation. Formula 5. Transition from the individual consciousness to the universal. Evolutionary processes from divine purpose into plan and then into manifestation. The nature of individual renunciation, the one life. 6. Transition from cyclic living into life itself. The purpose of cycles. Control of time, space, consciousness. Will, if followed with spiritual exactitude, reveal your soul life pattern, and this will be an expression of a life purpose.
This is from Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2. And it is in the section following the instructions on meditation and is a transition into the section on what Master Dwalkul calls hints. So let's do this, Ben. Let's do the next slide and then gather people's thoughts.
Lead us, O Lord, from darkness to light, creation in the light, from the unreal to the real, creation in time and space. Lead us, O Lord, from death to immortality, the world of nature, the creative process and life energy. From chaos to beauty, the relation of world effect, world meaning, world causes. Lead us, O Lord, from the individual to the universal, progressive evolutionary creation. From cyclic living into life itself, the purpose of cycles, control of time, space, consciousness.
Have you used the mantra yourself? Has it been part of meditations that you've participated in? And to what extent? Oftentimes, it is lead us, O Lord, from darkness to light, from the unreal to the real, and from death to immortality. one of our colleagues extends it and uses this version. Lead us, O Lord, from darkness to light, from the unreal to the real, from death to immortality, from chaos to beauty, from the individual to the universal.
I see it as a call to soul awareness. When I have used that and have listened to that by others, it's almost, as I said, it's almost a calling forth to be the soul, to be light, to be truth, and to recognize the real and look away from the illusion, and to recognize that we are amidst one incarnation that is part of so many. And that brings the joy of the soul right to the surface, because it becomes an adventure. It becomes a chapter in a long, wonderful book, and a purposeful one. That's what I feel when I hear those, and I hear that mantra.
That joy of the soul, Jupiter ruling Sagittarius. I drew 2 vertical lines on this list of formulas, and they seem to indicate the great choice, and there's no choice. The first line is darkness, unreal, death, chaos, individual, cyclic. And the second line is light, real, immortality, beauty, universal, life itself. And what a choice.
The only thing else is by seeing the formulas one after the other, it sounds very Sagittarian because you reach a goal and then you see another. I guess let's see the progression.
Donna. Because the life is mostly centered on the plane of concrete life, thy words and speech will indicate thy thought. To these pay close attention. Recalling for emphasis today this passage from our session on sound and the word and silence, every word, differentiated or synthesized, affects the Deva kingdoms, and hence the form-building aspects of manifestation.
No sound is ever made without producing a corresponding response in Deva substance and driving multitudes of tiny lives to take specific forms. These forms persist and carry out their functions just as long as the sound which caused them is prolonged, and the specific will energy of the one who initiated the sound is directed towards the living form. This is equally true of a solar logos, enunciating the Aum, and thus producing the solar system, of a planetary logos sounding his planetary word, and producing a planetary scheme, of an adept producing results for the helping of humanity on the physical plane, and of an ordinary human being who, in much differentiated, diversified speech, expresses an inner purpose or state of mind, and thus builds a form or vehicle in Deva substance. The majority of human beings as yet build unconsciously, and the form constructed is either of a beneficent or maleficent agency, according to the underlying motive or purpose of the man, and will carry out his will as long as its terms of being persist. We began our consideration of ideas, illusion, and ideation with our session on form. Let us continue to become aware of the higher devas, whom we must obey, and those devas with whom we must cooperate. Go ahead, Catherine.
We still recording? Could we pause?
So it depends.
Go ahead.
I lost it. So the sound always also depends on which level you sound, because on the soul level, the sound has a different effect than on the personality level, or on a solar angel level, or creator's level. It's the sound is more out of time. It's ongoing and unfolding in time, but it's from a space which is not in time. Just trying to give some inner impression into words. It's difficult.
I think we
But when I
let's go back to the formulas.
when I see creation being the word in the beginning, it's ongoing and ongoing. It's not set up at some time and repeated or sounding forth. It's still like ongoing right now until the breath is taken in again. So for me, that has to do with on which level we are in time, within time, or within another space and level. It has different effects.
And the connection is to this universal creative aspect, the sound in relation to that, the vibration in relation to that, these different levels that it creates in and on. And then I guess you could do a study of the way in which the sustaining vibration, for example, the bowl that you talked about, still holding that sound, almost imperceptible, that it is sustained. There is depending on what level you're speaking of. So maybe the point is to be aware of that more consciously, to really develop the consciousness of those levels. Can we use the sound to expand the consciousness? Just a thought. Just paying close attention. Donna?
The second rule of action. The ability to enter the silence of the high places will follow next. The stilling of the mind depends upon the law of rhythm. If you are vibrating in many directions and registering thoughts from all sides, this law will be unable to touch you. Balance and poise must be restored before equilibrium can be reached. The law of vibration and the study of atomic substance are closely intertwined. When more is known about these atoms and their action, reaction, and interaction, then people will control their bodies scientifically, synchronizing the laws of vibration and of rhythm. They are the same and yet unlike. They are phases of the law of gravitation.
This synchronization of the laws of vibration and of rhythm. The same and yet unlike. Any thoughts about these phases of this law of gravitation? As it, in a way, relates to the question that we had last time in relation to this idea of weight, which came to a mind, and we had a short, we didn't have an exchange about that, but I'd be interested, those who were thinking about the notion of frequency, which is related to vibration, and frequency related to rhythm. It's such an interesting concept, interesting idea, and how it's all intertwined. Balance and poise and control of the bodies, plural, which means mind, astral, and etheric, physical, integrating those into a personality, and then this atomic substance on each of these levels being intertwined.
I'm reminded of what we read earlier about the need to have a quiet mind to receive inspiration. And for me personally, my mind is quite active, third ray there. And if it says, if you are vibrating in many directions and registering thoughts from all sides, this law will be unable to touch you. And some days it feels like that. And also the plethora of information we have from the internet and from the rapid transmission of news. The vibrating in many directions and registering thoughts from all sides, I think is something to be, for me especially, to be mindful of, um, in order to allow the silence of the high place to enter.
It's interesting that the term for the technique of integration for the third ray is stillness.
Yes.
And that word coherence, which I see a lot on the AI stuff, is this is kind of an that this is coherence here when we cohere. But the law of gravitation, so it makes everything stick. I don't know, this is just a very interesting slide.
There's much to ponder, and I think particularly in Sagittarius because it is related to inspiration. And if we think about the personality of our planetary being, it is the third ray, and the need to integrate through a kind of stillness in the planet. People are drawn to nature, I think, because of this need to experience on, even in the physical body, the etheric body, to be stilled. And there is a different type of weight. There's a release of some of the quantity, certainly, of the vibrations. And maybe in the stillness, there's an ability to be in sync with the vibrations of nature. For example, the ocean, the waves are in a rhythm that brings the heart into a synchronization with a stillness, a rhythm that calms and creates that stillness. In the high places, there's another vibration. It's just very interesting to think about the atomic substance of the earth. And then on every level.
And I also have to think of the rhythm of breathing, and breathing consciously just does the same. It can still the mind. When you get into the right rhythm of breathing in, stillness, breathing out, wait, stillness. So there's a rhythm which has these pauses, this pauses of stillness. And yeah, this rhythm is just everywhere. You can find it in nature. You can find it everywhere, even in the bloodstream.
And the daily rhythm of daily meditation.
I
Just
was
thinking of,
going,
yeah, I was thinking of God spoke. There was a sound, and he said, "Let there be light," and the sound made the light. And it said this: the spirit, the breath, hovered over the waters, the chaos, from chaos to beauty through the breath, the sound making the light, and the breath stilling the waters. And I've just been falling in love with the emptiness after the out breath, and thinking that you have to either pause at the end of the in breath or the out breath before you can shoot the arrow.
that in and out breath, which is such a part of meditation. And when you, Joe, said, and daily, that daily rhythm of meditation, there is a sense of vertical rhythm as we rise and come back down and rise and come back down in sort of our daily rhythm within meditation, but even beyond meditation. And it's just interesting because I go back into that law of gravitation, and in the scientific component of it, it draws one down. It keeps us grounded. It brings us into what I see as a lower vibration. And so it's just interesting to sort of see it in that vertical rhythm where we rise beyond that gravitational pull. And at the same time, we're then back grounded. And I think there's service within that as we rise and connect at that higher level and then bring it down, and in something that probably is not necessarily words, but is vibration and just action. We ground that back into the earth and into all of the physical manifestation that exists there. So it's there's something about the vertical breath, which is interesting.
Thank you. We're coming on an hour, so we'll do a few more slides, see where we get. Let's see. Ellen?
The law of vibration, a subsidiary law under the law of economy of the four in number, dealing with the lower quaternary. The first of these is the law of vibration, dealing with the keynote or measure of the matter in each plane. By knowledge of this law, the material of any plane in its 7 divisions can be controlled.
So let's put this in the context of the 5 keynotes of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is on the mutable cross, relates to the incarnational experience, I guess one might say, until one is ready to mount the fixed cross. So it all relates to this law of economy and the 4 sub-laws, and the first of these is the law of vibration. So those keynotes might be worthwhile to ponder in Sagittarius on whichever keynote you were attracted to. And I think in this group I've heard a resonance with the arrow. So that may give you a hint as to which plane and then that keynote, interestingly, dealing with the measure of the matter of that plane. Was it the physical plane, or the etheric, actually? Was it the astral or the mental or the higher mental? What are you seeking to control?
What is the sound? The mass of aspirants and of disciples are today learning the meaning of the Om, which is not the word made flesh, but the word released from form and expressing itself as soul spirit and not as body, soul, spirit. The sound of the Om and the sound itself are all related to vibration and to its differing and varied effects. The secret of the law of vibration is progressively revealed as people learn to sound forth the word in its 3 aspects. Students would also do well to ponder on the distinction between the breath and the sound, between the process of breathing and of creating directed vibratory activity. The one is related to time and the other to space, and they are distinct from each other. And as the old commentary puts it, the sound is the final and yet initiating sound concerns that which is neither time nor space. It lies outside the manifested all, the source of all that is, and yet is not.
This may have particular significance for those who have followed Martin Muller's work in terms of the AUM, the template that he uses to penetrate this secret of the law of vibration. The AUM body, soul, spirit, that triangle. And the OM, soul, spirit. So in creating thought forms of solution, which is the idea behind the meditative efforts to achieve change in the world, many projects, many meditative groups, meditating to create really thought forms of solution. Those in the first, the telepathic communicators with the first ray emphasis, telepathically connecting with leaders and those who are going to be responsible for implementing solutions to world problems. The trained observers working primarily with the second ray, the radiatory power of the three lights with the techniques of indifference, light, and the presence. The magnetic healers working to impress groups and nations. That is what DK says there. The magnetic healers, the third ray emphasis. And I might say that the point, it's the third ray point of that triangle of aspects. Focused on that. And then the fourth group creating the square, the what he calls creative educators, building the Antakarana. So all of this is related to this learning the meaning of the Om and this secret of the law of vibration progressively revealed as we learn to sound forth the word in its three aspects with that triangle of aspects. So it's a very interesting point of study. And the distinction between the breath and the sound, the process of breathing itself, the process of invocation and evocation itself, and then the creating of this directed vibratory activity. Much to ponder.
The
Ellen,
cord, yes, the cord of the ego. The Tibetan master says, when I use the term reciprocal vibration, what do I mean? I mean the adaptation of the personality or lower self to the ego or higher self, the dominating of the personality ray by the ray of the ego, and the combining of their tones. I mean the blending of the primary color of the higher self with the secondary hue of the lower self until beauty is achieved. At first, there is dissonance and discord, a clashing of the colors, and a fight between the higher and the lower. But as time progresses, and later, with the aid of the master, harmony of color and tone is produced. a synonymous matter, until eventually you will have the basic note of matter, the major third of the aligned personality, the dominant fifth of the ego, followed by the full chord of the monad or spirit.
The blotting out of the dweller, the radiance of the angel, revealing that highest light of the monad. So this lays out, in terms of sound and vibration, the progression of the initiations, the progression along the blending and integration of personality and soul, and then soul fusion, and then the highest fusion. So it gives us a different way to think about these progressions and try to integrate it into our own process in relation to ideas which are brought through the soul into the soul vehicle and then brought down into thought and then into thought form. Just something to be reminded of as we consider these rules of thought and move forward with those related directly to speech. Ellen, would you read this too as well before we continue with those?
What is the sound? The creative point of tension, a tension achieved by a planetary logos when he responds to the sound of the ineffable name and breathes it forth in his turn in three great sounds, which made one sound on his own plane of expression, thus creating the manifested world, the impulse towards the unfoldment of consciousness, and the influence of life itself. This is the sound. The Om, rightly sounded, releases the soul from the realm of glamour and of enchantment. It is the sound of liberation, the great note of resurrection, and of the raising of humanity to the secret place of the Most High, when all other words and sounds have failed. If the above is true of the Om and of its group effects, it is infinitely more true of the great invocation. Words of power, and this is true also of the Om, are all of the second ray origin. This is the ray of the manifestation of consciousness. They are therefore intended for soul use, because the soul is the expression of the second aspect of divinity, and only the soul can really employ these words and sounds, and thus produce the desired results, which are always in line with the divine plan. It is frequently forgotten that they must be used by the soul in a dynamic matter, involving the serious recognition of the will aspect. The great invocation, the Om, and all such words of power must go forth from the soul, whose nature is love, and whose purpose is solely group good. Backed by, or occultly propelled forth, to use a translation of an almost untranslatable occult idea, by the dynamic will aspect, and carried outwards as an integrated thought form upon a stream of living illumined mental substance. This process, therefore, brings into activity the will, the love, and the intelligence of the man who is using these words and formulas. What results, therefore, when the word is correctly sounded by a group of people, rightly intermingled? It attracts the attention of certain of the devas or angels whose work lies with the bodies of men and enables them to do that work with greater exactitude and make contacts that later will be of use. Heavy enough. What is the mechanism for measurement? Quantitative weight of the substance of a plane. Qualitative weight of the substance of a plane.
Relating us to that law of gravitation. I think we'll stop here today because there's been a shift up into what is occurring within the thought streams of this particular group. And there seems to be a call to have time to integrate. So I'm going to suggest that we stop here and we'll go back to our keynotes of Sagittarius. I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. And hold these progressions as you ponder in the coming week. That intuition governs aspiration. That this originates on the higher levels, coming from the soul. And that this is the cycle, annual cycle, for the focus on inspiration. Where the soul inspires the personality life expresses itself through the personality. And of these 5 keynotes, lead us, O Lord, from darkness to light. From the unreal to the real. From death to immortality. From chaos to beauty. From the individual to the universal. And ponder in the coming week on this work of Mars on the hierarchical level, the expression of the 6th ray, the great idealism and devotion of the 6th ray, and the empowering of those groups, disciples, and initiates working at this time to bring forth the reappearance of the Christ through the externalization of the hierarchy. It's been suggested that this would be led through the 6th ray ashram, and that there will be a clearing, a cleaning of the houses of religions and the emergence of a universal faith, ethics, values to guide humanity. Sound a silent Om as the soul